I'm doing a sound check. Amanda, can you hear me okay? You just respond on Slack.
Hey there.
Hey, Paul. How you
Hey,
doing?
you good? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I'm just gonna turn
Awesome.
my volume up a little bit. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome. Good weekend?
Yeah, yeah. Just well, all preparing. I got little ones and they're going back, so it's all prep
Is that was that today or that's later in the week?
later in the week. Still some time. Things pandemonium to tell you the truth.
Cool. So I've never done one of these. So we're live now. I've never
Oh,
done one of these Instagram lives before, so it's going to be a little bit of an adventure in babysitting for me, but see how it goes.
cool.
Thanks a lot for taking part. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's important stuff.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So we'll wait a couple more minutes for some people to join us. I saw I saw you got one of those boxes from the CNE. So what
Yes.
comes in that? What comes in that?
Oh, it was delightful. I tell people I was born on opening day, and I go every year. And this was the real. They did this online piece, and I said I'm not even gonna look. The CNE, the whole concept is tactile.
Right.
So it was candy corn and some stuff from a couple of vendors, and it was delightful. And of course, a couple tickets for
That's
next
amazing.
year.
That's
Yeah,
that's
it was
nice.
such a great idea. I'd buy 10 if I could, because we just want the place to be alive and healthy
Yeah,
for
yeah.
generations to
Like,
come.
sorry.
For generations to come, right? Like I and get a bit of a history buff of the CNE too, and such important stuff that it did over the past 100+ years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a tradition for us. We go every year. My kids look forward to it every year, and it's the same routine every year. And so
That's what's
one
nice
of those
about
things.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually go 3 times a year with different people because it's three completely different experiences. I go once with the kids, and then I go once with kind of my buddies through that night midnight, the midway thing,
right.
and then I actually have a couple of seniors, my godmother and a couple other folks, and we go, and they're the only people who are as OCD as me to meticulously walk the grid of the International Center and the Craft Building.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, so
The
there you
kids
go. So
won't
it's
do that. They won't have the patience, but there's such creativity too, right?
and that's a lot of the stuff that you got in that box, eh?
Yes. Oh my God. I don't know. Obviously no one's customizing it per se,
Right.
but one of the things from the vendors in the box is one of the most meaningful things in the world to me. I used to run a homeless program in the city, and this one random vendor at the city has the best potato peeler on the entire unit. And I bought close to maybe 200 over the past 20 years. And that potato peeler from the vendor was in the box.
Oh, amazing. All
Yeah,
right. So
and
so so maybe maybe they knew who they were dealing with.
maybe I am a
They're
I am a
they're
pretty big proponent.
so I'm getting a message, Paul, from someone on my end, just asking if you could speak a little louder.
You should.
Um, it might just be because of the ear pods, but I think
Yeah,
everything else looks good, and everyone says you look sharp, which is always the case. So I think we're just after 12, so I think maybe we'll get started if that works for you.
that's good.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to Epilogue's first Instagram Live, and we're going to be talking about planned giving today. Now, I know for a lot of people, they may have only recently heard about Epilogue, or maybe they've heard about Epilogue for the first time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Epilogue, and then I'm going to introduce our guest for today. So my name is Arin Klug. I'm one of the co-founders of Epilogue, and the other co-founder, Daniel Goldgut, he and I actually practiced together as lawyers for a number of years in the area of tax and estate planning. And that was really cool. I mean, we really each got to develop such a niche. And it was at a time when, we were getting married and having our own families, and we had friends sort of going through the same life stages. And here we were as estate planning lawyers developing expertise in an area that all of a sudden a lot of people we're interested in. These are things you don't really think about when you're, in your 20s. All of a sudden, you get a little bit older and you have a family, and all of those things like insurance and financial planning, investing, and estate planning, things that you need to put in place to protect your family, all of a sudden they become really important. And so Daniel and I were getting calls from friends saying, I need to get a will in place. Can you help me with that? And the way that those conversations sort of ended up was us describing the process and the cost that it would take to do it through us. And unfortunately, that was kind of the end of a lot of those conversations. Our friends would basically say we're just not in a position to pay that much to do our wills right now. And for us, we were working at a downtown firm for a lot of high net worth clients, and so we had high rates. And so we just couldn't really help them in our practice. And the other thing that we found that we were having trouble with is they would say, okay, well, who can help me? Who can do a will at a price point that's going to that's affordable for me right now? And that was another thing we struggled with. We couldn't really give a great answer because any lawyer that we would point them to was going to charge at least $800, $1,000 to do that planning. And so that was kind of a bit of a light bulb moment for me and Dan. We sort of looked at that whole experience and did some research, and we saw that the problem was not unique to us and our groups of friends. This is a problem that's Canada-wide. Looking into the numbers, we saw that over half of Canadian adults don't have even basic estate planning in place, and so we sort of set out on a mission to fix that. And we started Epilogue with the goal of democratizing estate planning. And for us, that means number one, educating people. helping people understand what estate planning is, why people need wills, what happens if you die without a will in place, and also educating them about some of the documents that go around will planning, like powers of attorney, planning for incapacity. The other thing we wanted to do, in addition to educating people, was creating a platform, an online platform, where people could actually go on and create their own wills in a short amount of time and do it affordably and do it in a way that felt right to them. We saw that a lot of the reasons people weren't making wills is because it was, in addition to being time consuming and unaffordable, it was a topic people didn't want to think about, or they didn't think it was urgent. So by doing the education piece and by creating a platform to allow people to do it, we thought that we'd be able to get a lot of people over that hump and get them to complete their estate planning. So we started on this project about a year ago, just over a year ago. We joined the Legal Innovation Zone, which is a legal tech incubator affiliated with Ryerson University. And we launched in March of 2020. And as of literally today, we launched in Ontario, and as of literally today, we are now available in Ontario and in Alberta. So anyone from Ontario and Alberta, as of today, can come on to epiloguewills.com and do their planning. So today, we're going to talk about, in this program, we're going to talk about a specific area of estate planning, and which is gift planning, planned giving in Canada. And I'm going to introduce our guest because there is no better person that I can think of to talk about planned giving in Canada than Paul Nazareth. Paul has over 20 years of experience in the charitable sector. He's worked with large charities. He's worked with small charities. He's worked on the wealth planning side and on the trust company side, helping Canadians structure their own giving. And now Paul is the VP of Education and Development for the CAGP. That's the Canadian Association of Gift Planners. So what does that mean? To me, at least, it means that he's an educator. He is here to teach people about charitable giving, to dispel myths about charitable giving and donations. And bottom line is, he wants to help a lot of people do a lot of good things. Anyone who knows Paul knows that he is super passionate about what he does, and he loves to talk about it. And so we're really glad that he could join us today. So Paul, welcome. I think we might have lost you for a second.
Yeah,
You're good. You're good now.
To the better Wi-Fi.
I was just singing your praises and saying how wonderful it is to have you here and to say thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me too. And it's great to be here and excited to have this discussion.
Awesome. Okay, so I've got a lot of great questions for you. Before we dive into those, I just want to say that if any of the viewers have to take off at any point in time, that's cool, because this is going to be posted on our IGTV. We're also going to have some time for Q&A at the end, so you can drop any questions you have in the comments, and Amanda and Sydney are going to feed those to me so I can pass them along to you. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so CAGP has done some really great work, some really great research on charitable giving in Canada. And I was reading one of the papers they recently put out, and in there was something that was interesting, but kind of confirmed something that I've sort of felt all along. Canadians are pretty charitable people, right? Mm-hmm. In the paper, it said 82% of Canadians give to charity year after year, which means that a couple things. It means Canadians are charitable people, and it means there's a lot of organizations in Canada that are doing some really amazing things here and all around the world. But I also think that a lot of Canadians are like me when it comes to their charitable giving. And what I mean by that is we give to the same charities year after year. So, and a lot of time that comes up because, I get an email or a piece of mail, or somebody calls me and asks me to make a donation, or I have a friend who's participating in a bike ride or a run, and they've sent me an email asking me to sponsor them. So I make these donations year after year. But what we're talking about today, planned giving, that's different than sort of the year after year donation. So I guess the first question is very basic. What is planned giving, and how is it different than the donations that me or a lot of other people might make, year after year when we get asked to?
For sure. Basically, almost everything we do with charity is fundraising, as opposed to planned giving, where you're actually planning your giving. And, so having that thought process, it's kind of like making a will. Most people go out through life thinking that they have expressed their values, they thought deeply about who they are, and they don't do that till really they make a will, right? It used to be called will and testament. And, for a lot of people in one of my organizations, we used to call this a moral biography. It is time that you speak your values with with the story of everything you have on earth. Same thing in fundraising. For most people, they give because they're asked. It's not a deeply fulfilling experience. And when people go a bit deeper to say, what is the long term, the short term, how can I do this the most effectively? That's plan giving at its best.
That's amazing. And I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head with your description. The giving that people give is because they're asked. And I don't think people sort of take the time to, sit back and think about doing the research into the organizations that are doing the work that's important to them. So, I've sat on the board of a small charity before, and so much of our time was, around the fundraising piece was thinking about how to keep the lights on and how to keep our programs running, right? And that fundraising is the fundraising that we've talked about already, which is the making sure that donations are coming in this year, right? And that's the calling campaigns and things like that. So from a charity's point of view, how does planned giving fit into that? For a charity that's sort of thinking about today, and a lot of them are, how does the planned giving piece fit in, where you're sort of putting those resources into a program today that you may not see any financial benefits from as a charity for years down the road?
So, finally, we've got some research to show what are the most important things to charities. And of course, they're trying to keep the lights on. But the part of this is that this is part of the journey with the donor. Someone connects with you, they give to you because they connect with your cause. And ideally, you live a life together of this kind of connection, this giving, this meaning. And now you reach the point of ultimate meeting. And most people, most charities are not asking for that gift. Who's asking for that gift? Usual suspects, alma mater, university, hospitals, large organizations who understand that diversification of revenue is important. So on the front end, this is about the diversification of that revenue. But really, it's giving the people who care about you the most the ability to express that. Back in the day, we thought, yes, it was deferred dollars. So yes, it's only bequests coming in. We now have Canadian and American data to show that when a donor connects with a charity through a gift in their will, well, they've just made you a legal member of their family. So we're connected now. And what do you do with family? You give. So they have a deeper relationship, and their giving annually also goes up.
That's such an interesting way of thinking about it, and it sort of mirrors very well what I saw in practice. I mean, I had a lot of clients who had charities that they wanted to meaningfully benefit in their wills, and every time they would come back to revise their will, they always turned their minds back to those charities. And more often than not, the decision was, you know what? I'm not giving enough. Let me increase the gift a little bit. And that aligns very well with what you're saying, as sort of seeing this charity as part of the family and saying, I can give a little bit more. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
The other thing you said was about diversification. I imagine that that's really important, particularly in times like this, where people's pocketbooks are being hit. And I imagine that is that's being felt in the charitable sector as well. And having that kind of uh, revenue stream sort of built in, where you've, for a charity, from a charity's point of view, I mean, where you have these planned gifts in the will, like that sort of gifts that don't, once you have a program up and running and you sort of have those gifts lined up, they're there and they're probably not going away regardless of how people's finances go from year to year.
Well, they're holding down the fort in the pandemic. So the gifts that have kept the lights on for organizations of all sizes have been bequests. Because, life and death doesn't stop in the pandemic. People care deeply about the organization. This weekend, I read in my city magazine here in Toronto, Toronto Life, and they do this rundown of things with egregious costs or whatever. But they throw a couple nice ones in there. And one of them was a donation, a bequest of six figures to a local, tiny, community-run city zoo. And the individual said, I raised 3 generations of kids coming to this zoo. I
Hmm.
deeply love this place. The kids, again, this individual has an estate. They're, of easily about a couple million, but because they planned it, because they went to their lawyer and said, "What can I do in my will like this?" And they planned it together. No doubt that gift was probably another zero bigger than they thought they could do. So it was a beautiful gift, and it's so different. It's nobody, you're not walking or running, no one else asked you. This organization runs deep within your family. It's part of your family's story. So you made it part of your family's will and estate.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's again mirrors what we saw in practice, and it's an opportunity for people to do really great things. And that kind of brings us to sort of the next question. From the charity's perspective, these are obviously really important gifts. Well, what about from the donor's perspective, right? Like there's there's the whole piece which you started to talk about, a change in mindset from giving because I'm asked to this introspection about what's important to me and how do I want to give. But what else goes on from the donor's point of view when they're thinking about putting a planned gift in their will?
It is such a different perspective. It's interesting, Aaron, I've seen that Epilogue has done some fun work recently, helping people think about estate planning, including their pets. And people care a lot about their pets. Well, people care a lot about their kids, and people care a lot about the money they spent a lifetime earning. But when they think about care as opposed to just giving or generosity, I've worked in private client myself and leading clients down the path to say, just calm down with all the tax receipts from last year, because that represents a lot of other people's goals. Let's talk about what are your values. Let's talk about what means stuff to you. How do you spend your time? Where do you go? Right. So my personal legacy, I'll tell you, it's my life story told in my estate, and a big part of it for me is public libraries. Right, the library was there for me. I worked in nonprofit my whole career. Nobody's bankrolling us for EMBAs. And so the library was there for me at every stage when I needed it. And I want it to be there for people in the future in the same way, in the same dynamic way where libraries now are constantly evolving. So my gift very specifically is undesignated so that they can use the money on whatever cool thing they're doing in the future when I'm gone. So, that's the mindset. It's so different, and people also find it very fulfilling to be able to go backwards through their life story and say, oh, wow, that was the alma mater that really made a difference. That was the institution that helped me launch the career. This is where the family goes every year or met, and we care about this type of art or medium. It's a huge deal.
There, you used a word there in that answer that I just want to unpack a little bit for some people that might not have come across it before. You used the word undesignated. So what
Mhm.
does that mean when you're making a planned gift versus a designated gift?
In the world of fundraising, one of the challenges is people, and we hear it from the studies, donors worry about what a charity is going to do with their money. And so, one of the challenges is very often is people want to designate their gift to make sure 100% of my gift goes to this program. Absolutely, that people want to feel impactful. But if 100% of everybody's gift goes only to the programs and then the charity goes bankrupt, which is an actual possibility in this pandemic, there won't be an organization in the future to actually enact your legacy with. So, one of the things is that charities really want that undesignated gift. And for me, my original bequest to the library was designated, was very targeted. And over the past decade that they've been in my will, and we've been in dialogue, they've also helped build the trust with me and help me understand and educate myself as a donor to understand what it means to leave an undesignated gift. And now we've built the trust that I can say, I trust you with this large amount of money I'm giving you to do the right thing at the right time. So it's such a big win-win because it helps the individual fulfill their goals because they care about the mission of the organization. But the charity also brings in money, and when it's undesignated, yes, they can use it also for operating. But operating is the work of the charity. You don't exist without operating. We're not programs floating off into space, right? Just like a company is not their product, it's their people. So yeah, so that's the piece that's really important for both charities and donors to understand a bit more of together.
In my experience, donors or prospective donors largely understand that difference and understand that it's important. And so I think you're right. A lot of people approach planned giving with a very specific program in mind. But when they understand what you just explained, I think a lot of people are very quick to say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, once they've developed that relationship, I've heard lots of people say, I trust that they're going to put it to the place where it's most needed. Um, the other thing that you said in a previous answer, you used a word that I think might be a little heavy for some people. It's the word legacy. When I think of the word legacy, it's sometimes someone's name on the side of a building, right? Or an endowment that somebody has created in their own name. And for me and most other people, we're not in a position to do that. So can I have a legacy even if I don't have the six figures to put to a zoo or a building?
This is a really important myth. It's a really important feeling for a lot of people when they do estate planning. It's like a rock that's a barrier for them because they think I got to be a philanthropist to do philanthropy, and the answer couldn't be farther from the truth. In Canada, there is no estate tax. It's probate costs, and for us, it is a tax credit applied to income tax on your estate, meaning everybody gets it. In the States, your estate's got to be in the millions of dollars to benefit from charitable deductions on your estate. In Canada, anything after $200, you're getting a tax receipt that's getting you about half back. Same for your estate, and you can deduct more in charitable tax credits through an estate plan. Now, that being said, that doesn't really answer the question, what is a legacy? Because you bet it's a heavy question. It's a 3.8-ton question technically, because if you Google it in Canada, what you'll get is a Subaru. Uh, which deeply annoys me. I recently, well, not recently, I've been a fan of the musical Hamilton for
Yep.
many years. And in that musical, right when he's considering his own, he shoots out the line, "What is legacy? It's planting the seed of a garden you'll never see."
Yeah.
And so I've also heard one of my favorites is that legacy is planting the seed of a tree under whose shade you'll never sit. So, a great United Kingdom expert, Richard Radcliffe, says that people give a legacy to say one of two things: please and thank you. And again, my gift to the public library, what I often call the church of the mind. I'm a faith-based guy, and I give to my faith institution because for me, sitting in those pews, just like I want the books and the programs in the future, I want that seat to be there for someone in the future. And to my alma mater, that's where I met my spouse, it's where I started my career. So in all of these gifts, there's a little please and thank you. That's really legacy. And everybody can have one. If they just think in their life about what organizations meant a lot to them, just saying thanks. That's what a legacy is. Please do this, and thank you for that.
That's amazing. I mean, it's an incredible way to put it, and it really does reframe the whole idea. Which again, if somebody is thinking of it as something that's out of their grasp, I would imagine they're less likely to do it. But to put it in the way that you have, it really brings it down to every person being able to make a difference in a way that's meaningful to them and phrased in that way and making it easy for people to do this in their wills or by donating an insurance policy or something along those lines. I mean, that's fantastic. um, so the research that I read about CAGP, that CAGP just put out rather, talked about some myths, some things that stop people from doing estate planning, and the one that sort of really stood out as particularly compelling is that people see it or seem to see it as like an either or decision, right? I've got a family and that's my legacy. My family is my legacy, and so I'm giving everything to them, and there's really no room to give to charities. But that's not really the case, is it?
Not at all, and especially in Canada. We've got this incredible blessing that the government lets us use our charitable tax credits against 100% of the income tax in our state. So, when I used to explain that to people when I worked in a trust company, they would say, well, I want to give this gift, but the majority of it's coming from my taxes. And how much can I afford to give? That's what they asked their estate advisor. And we'd
Hmm.
give them some figures of what they could afford to give, and they would say, this feels like winning the lottery.
Right.
For a middle class person to make a gift of five figures, that is huge. And so helping people into that mental space to understand what was possible was massively inspiring to them, because then they got dreaming as to what they could do with the organizations they love. Right? So we would often even say in planning that the charity child. So if you got four kids, charity's the fifth. And I like to say it's the only one that doesn't talk back. And partly it is, and this is straight up. It's helping some really great people. I connect with a lot of great business leaders because I believe in entrepreneurialism, the power of what that can do. But there's a lot of them. I tell them I spent my life observing bad business succession. And we know that chemically, children exist to spite us and reject any hope we have for their life or legacy. And so this fifth kid, the charity child, for a lot of people can be your vision. And in a lot of ways too, it frees those kids from sometimes legacies and successions parents dream of, but are probably not going to happen, right? Warren Buffett gave us a great gift when he said, I want to give my kids enough that they can do anything, but not so much that they'll do nothing. And so this is that, giving them enough that they can do anything in the estate, but creating a charitable legacy that either they can direct or exist for the future that will be your vision completely executed. And with the right kind of partner, the it's limitless. It's really exciting, the inspirational things you can do.
One of the things that I'm going to add to that, which I saw in practice, was also the clients who said, "I'm including this as a gift, as an example to my kids of what they should be doing." They have a charitable intent, and it's something that they try to instill in their own children. And of course, as parents, we know there is no better way to teach a child something than to show them. And so this is what these people were doing in their own wills. And of course, yeah, I mean, as tax and estate planning lawyers, we were asked those same questions as you were when you were in the wealth management space, which is how do I pay as little tax as possible? And for clients of ours that were looking at large capital gains on death or the death of a second spouse, charity was one very big piece of the puzzle that we would put together to say this is how you're going to minimize the liability. I mean, if you think about it, it's sound tax policy, right? The government saying you can either give the money to us in the form of taxes, and we will spend it where we think it's appropriate, or you can give the money to a registered charity that we know is going to do good work, and we're just as happy if the money goes there because it's going towards programs and outreach and things to help the community as a whole. So, tax policy perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
The challenge is who cares about tax policy, right? This is the bummer, is that 85% of Canadians
Well,
say
you're,
they give,
you're
only a couple and change use the receipts.
yeah, well, you're talking to a tax lawyer, so unfortunately, I care about tax policy more than most people. But you and I will get the conversation a little bit more mainstream, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, we've talked a lot about the pieces that go with planned giving, and we've talked a lot about doing it in a will. There are other ways that somebody can benefit a charity when they pass away. Can you talk about some of those?
Yeah, and what we do now is when we're teaching charities and even advisors this, it's really about blending that, integrating for charities into their overall charitable discussions and for advisors into their overall financial and estate planning. So, that's one of the biggest pieces there to help people do is to say, okay, for a lot of people, they're already giving away money right now. People are asking, they're sponsoring, etc. When right now they could be giving publicly listed securities and eliminating that capital gains. So, for people who have had gains in the past number of years, this is a hugely effective way to give right now. And then as they do their estate plan and they see again, not an either or, it doesn't have to be my family or charity. It can be my family and charity. And then the real planning takes place, which is what's the nature of the gift, what's the asset, so you can give securities in life or death. You can also, in some cases, when someone wants to go around the estate, they could be using insurance. And again, we use insurance to protect our wealth and life. We can also be using our insurance to multiply our impact as part of a charitable plan because small payment, big payout. And so it multiplies that generosity and can help an estate plan or current giving plan.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen situations where people will have insurance for a very specific purpose, and they've lived long enough and sold their business, and they don't really need the insurance anymore as they would have when they were younger. And so there may be a policy with a very high fair market value that could serve as as an asset that's ripe for donating today. And today is when you would get that charitable receipt for it. So that's really cool.
That blows people's minds because again, they've had this policy kicking around. A lot of them, just like you said, it came from a previous life. They've got strong coverage right now. They're making that gift of a current policy. They're getting a large tax receipt right now, and they're getting massive, not just peace of mind, but just this amazing euphoric feeling. And we've actually got this from some really cool brain research done in the States about how they feel when they make a gift of that size. But now you get to dream about truly legacy. And that study showed that the part of the brain that connects to gifts and wills is not the same as the part of the brain connected to general giving. General philanthropy, general giving is euphoric, but you connect estate planning to autobiography. And when someone says, this is a part of my story, and this is a part of the story now I'll get to say thank you for, hugely fulfilling.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then, I mean, I imagine also part of it is when you're giving an insurance policy, it probably alleviates that feeling that a lot of people have that the CAGP is really trying to, the myth that they're trying to dispel of this is coming out of my family's pocket, right? When it's insurance, it's sort of coming from a third party, so nobody's really missing it. So that totally makes sense to me in terms of like uh, giving that insurance policy as sort of being really the ultimate for people.
Yeah.
So, um, okay, so I imagine a lot of people that are watching it, they're sold. They get the benefits to themselves, to their family, to their legacy, and to the charity for doing this type of thing. But like this is really big stuff we're talking about. So how does someone start? What are the steps someone could take today to go down this road of figuring out what gifts they're going to put in their will?
So, you start with what you got. And for a lot of people, what they got is tax receipts. So, take a look at last year, see what charities you give to. But again, this is the time to ask yourself, am I giving because someone else asked and it means something to them? Or am I giving because it's got a connection to my story? And again, that's the filter. This is your testament. This is your life story. Make sure that those gifts are aligned with your values, what you believe, what you want to say thanks for, and what you want to see in the world. A lot of people, they really flip their mindset when they say, okay, I'm saying thanks, that's easy. My university, my family piece, YMCA that watch the kids. But when we ask them, what is the world you want to see? What is the world you want to leave? They start talking to say, oh, well, now we're talking about climate change. Now we're talking about solving hunger or poverty. And I believe that in the work that I did. Well, now that's a new ballgame. And that requires some homework. Got to go find those organizations. And again, for some people, they'll find them and they'll put them in the will. And that's the first gift they've ever made to that charity. The weirdest part is imagine you never told that charity. And someone, wakes up on a Monday morning and you've passed away and made a 5 or 6 figure gift and never even talked to them before. Right? This is like getting a wedding ring in the mail because they've made you a part of the family but never told you why. So this is the other part that we all got to do is go deeper. And it sounds wacky to say it, but go deeper in love because that's what it's about. It's people really caring deeply, deep enough to say, I'm going to give you part of everything I got on earth. That's how much I believe in
Oh, that's really cool. And yeah, I mean, I think in Canada we have over 85,000 registered charities, and it's going to take somebody time to sift through those things and think about what's important to them and sort of narrow down that search. But I imagine there's lots of tools online that people can use to say, okay, I'm interested in, addressing climate change, and so what are the organizations where I should sort of start to, who's doing the good work in those areas?
Yeah, primarily one of the ones out there that people, a lot of advisors turn to is the Canada Revenue Agency list of charities, which, as we know, is the government website and completely unusable and ugly as all heck. Uh, but they know that, and so they really allow partner foundations to pull out the data. So now you've got foundations that are out there helping donors not just give but do their homework. So an
Hmm.
organization like Canada Helps. So Canada Helps has all the 85,000 charities, has pulled the revenue agency T3010 tax data, so it can give a donor both an understanding of what they are by legality, assets, liabilities, etc., and who they are by the work they do and the ability to give. But that's one of the ways to do it. And that's online. But we got to remember a lot of people who are doing this are older too. So there's literally a book called the Canadian Donors Guide, and they can get a copy of it and do that work and do the reading if they want to, because they do that. They really help to sort it out in terms of categories and structure, all that kind of thing. So there's help for everybody.
That's good because I imagine hearing conversations like this, seeing that the work and the research that the Canadian Association of Gift Planners is doing, and turning their minds to their estate planning. Like these are all going to be motivating factors to get people thinking about charitable donations. I think it's amazing that CAGP has sort of gone down this road with an initiative to get people to put charities in their wills because it seems like not a lot of people are doing it yet, but in the future, with the work that you and the organization are doing, it's only going to increase, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's surprisingly low, right? Only 5% of Canadians have left a gift in their will, and we're on a campaign which will be called Willpower in 2021. All of Canada will hear about it, but our goal is to help people put a gift in their will of any size, but something that's meaningful to them, and that's the goal of the campaign. So it's really going to be quite exciting to launch that, but also get the data to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and to hear that number 5% and contrast that with the 82% that are giving year after year really, really speaks to exactly what we're talking about today, which is thinking about gift planning in a way that's totally different than the year after year planning of, answering those phone calls or responding to those emails or donating because a friend asked you to. And it's all donations, but really two separate things that we're talking about, which is great. And so thanks for helping us understand the differences, tease these things out, and appreciate the important differences, between everything. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions, because sure there may be one or two from our audience here. All right. Well, nothing yet. So I can, as
So
we,
funny enough, I have one from Twitter. That's the best part. Everybody, I've got people bouncing back and forth.
awesome.
An interesting one of the experience, because you've had this experience too, which is, what do Canadians give to? And they asked that because they were a charitable organization who's trying to engage their donors. And they're frustrated because not a lot of donors leave them in their wills. Now, I particularly happen to know this charity, and they don't really know that I'm kind of an anonymous donor. And one of the things is they don't ever ask.
Hmm.
Right, again, hospitals and universities who have almost an alumni relationship with a person, a lifelong relationship with that person. And I gotta say, for me, I met my spouse at my university, almost all my friends, I found my career and life. That's an absolute no-brainer. But a lot of organizations don't ask and say, here's how to do it, here's how to make it easy. And that's one of the challenges for them is when I would sit with clients and say, okay, you told us you want to make this plan, and we would help them do that walk backwards through their life story. So you landed in Canada here, and who helped you get established? Oh, well, that's a charity, the Salvation Army. And then you went on and you got educated in this space. Then you took this special scholarship. Well, that scholarship was a charitable donation. Somebody else gave so that you could get an opportunity. And when we unpack a life, there's an entirely second set of charities that people did not give to, but are DNA to their bones. And in fact, often they'll just be like, oh, how did I not think of this? And so we make the will, And those value charities go in the will. And what's the first thing they think when they're done the will? Well, I should be starting to give to these people. And I
Right.
should also be talking to them. One, to tell them I did it and why. And two, so we can learn about each other. Because again, you know too, age and stage, people change, people evolve, and their giving will evolve with them. I'm excited to say that, giving to the combating of climate change is changing rapidly. And that's
Hmm.
because people have come to understand what's needed. And there's a lot of people that said, I'm going to be gone 10 years from now. How could I possibly know what's needed to combat this crisis? I want to give to organizations that are tracking, solving, and if we can, jumping ahead with real solutions as opposed to always alleviating the suffering. Why are we waiting for the oil spill instead of putting the things in place to make sure something like that doesn't happen?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a big change in the giving world.
The way that you've sort of phrased that approach, I've never heard that before, in terms of the life story. I think that's so powerful because I think everybody can do that exercise, and I imagine that very few people have to sort of start way back when. And these are the organizations that touch my. I mean, you clearly have it. You've talked about it with the libraries and how they touched your life from a very early point, and you've turned your mind to that, and you want to give back. I I imagine that would be such a meaningful exercise for everybody to go through and say, what are the organizations that touched my life at different points in time in a meaningful way, and sort of reconstructing a life story and saying, now I'm in a position, and even if it's starting small, I'm in a position where I can give back little by little and retell my story after I'm gone.
I've never done this exercise with anybody over 75, and it didn't end up in either them or me crying. Because people hang on to their life story, and people don't, they don't open their heart to everybody, and that's why we encourage a lot of them to do it on their own. Journal it out, unpack it yourself and your spouse, and they say this is the most meaningful thing. And again, a lot of them end up saying, "Yeah, I'm really embarrassed because when I, came up with the DNA of my life story, what were the value points that hold the roof up on my ethics, on my life? I'm not giving to the organizations that made me." And then they turn things around. And sure, the brother-in-law won't get the gift for his walk or ride next month, but then they're giving to something that means to them, and that's why I do this. It's so exciting to see people get aligned and excited. And again, they ask their tax planner and their estate lawyer how much I can afford to give, and of course, with Epilogue, they can see and do the planning, and they go, "I can't believe we could do this." So it's just a wonderful feeling.
Okay, but if my brother-in-law asks me, I'm going to send him to you, okay?
You do it. I'm the anti fundraising fundraiser. I teach people to say no. That's the one thing about fundraising. I'm in this business because I don't want to sell nobody chocolate almonds anymore. I've been traumatized as a child. They put me on the street selling these chocolate almonds and bake sales and everything. I'm like, you want to know how we getting diabetes? Fundraising. So that's the thing, is having people feel comfortable saying no to that, saying no at the cash register, where the big gigantic corporation wants you to give your money that they're then going to give, and you have a big check on. We got to start speaking up for ourselves and what we believe in. Because just like you said, this is a reallocation of government money. The government has said we could grant to social services, but if you have a different belief of how this could be done or the methodology behind it, food security, social justice, faith-based components, community-based ideas, justice-based ideas. Government doesn't often fund that. And so people say, I want to reallocate that to what I believe in. And again, a very meaningful thing, because there's a lot of things that people believe in that don't exist right now still. So yeah.
There's, if you have a couple more minutes, I think we've got some questions coming in now.
Yeah, great.
All right, let's have a look. Okay, so this is actually a question, and it's something you just touched on a little bit when you're with your grocery store example. The question is, how do people balance giving between big charities, the ones that get the bulk of the public donations, and the smaller charities, right? Because the big charities have the resources to spend on those types of campaigns like you were describing, but there's a lot of really good smaller charities that may have lower administrative costs, and where dollar for dollar more of the funds are actually going to the programs. So how does someone find those charities, sort of the diamonds in the rough, so to speak?
So, the challenge is, Aaron, is that people will often bring it down to exactly what you said is the capacity to do the work. But you know what? We're allowed to say, because this is your money that you earned, it's all about you. So, what impact do you want to have? So, the fact is that a lot of people are giving most of their money to big charities because they ask, and people talk about the overhead costs, but the fact is, what is the scope of impact? A lot of small charities that may do a lot of great work and run by volunteers are not making as big an impact in your community or society in general. So when people give, I often will hear that they're giving to spread out the scope of impact. I want to have a big impact in this area, and this is the large charity that will help me to do it. But I can tell you, most people aren't giving as much as they would probably like to locally, right in their community. And 9 times out of 10, there's a small local charity doing what you're often giving out of city, out of province for. I would
Mm-hmm.
ask some donors, you give it to a hospital that won't save you if you're in trouble. And why, as usual, is because they asked or somebody else asked them. So, your local hospital is there for you. You want to be there for them.
That's great. It's a great answer, and I think it's again brings home the point that it's on every individual to do this introspection for themselves, decide what's important, because in the end of the day, that's what's going to make for a meaningful gift. I think we have time for probably one more question, and the question is, what happens if my spouse passes away after me and they are giving to a charity in their will? Does that money go first to the charity or to the family first? So,
That's
um,
you.
what's that?
So that's you. That's the
That's
planning
me.
you do.
That's me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the planning I do. And as any good lawyer, of course, the answer to that question is it depends. It depends on what the will says. And so a lot of times, a couple will have the same charities that they care about, and they are both meaningful to the family. And so they, as a couple, will decide, okay, we want to make a large gift to charity, but we're going to do that after both of us are gone. And so the wills might have mirror gifts, but there'll be language in there that says we only want this gift to be made once, and it's on the death of the survivor of the two of us, because on the first death, there are opportunities to defer the taxes that would otherwise arise. And so from a tax planning perspective, it does make more sense to have that gift on the second death. But there are also lots of circumstances where there are charities that the couple has in common and charities that each individual has in their own will because that charity is specifically meaningful to them. And so that person might say, once I'm gone, this is a gift that I want to go right away to charity and to this specific charity that's meaningful to me. And that gift would be paid before anything goes over to the family. But again, if that person had taxes payable upon their death, Paul, you touched on it, there's a deemed disposition of everything you own when you pass away, as long as there's no deferral. And so if there's, that can create a large tax bill and a large opportunity to save taxes through charitable donations. So again, the answer is it depends. And if you've, have any questions about how that works, obviously, a lot of great estate planning lawyers can sort of take you through that process.
But we're seeing more and more that partners and spouses have different giving priorities. So that is again where the plan fits, and that's where you want to work with different partners. Again, the will doesn't have to be the ultimate vehicle to do that. When you work with a public foundation, like a community foundation or a different foundation that does this kind of work, they can take the bequest and then carry out long-term giving plans in both of your different priority areas, and if you want, controlled by your kids too. So that's where the cool planning is coming into play now in 2020.
Okay, so that was going to be the last question, but I'm going to hit you up with one more, not because it came in, but because it comes out of something you just said, like public foundations. Can you just give us like the quick 2 minutes on like what those are and how people can do exactly what you just described? Because that's a really interesting play for people.
It's the single most powerful secondary planning tool because the public foundations can factor into your will, can factor into your current gift planning of securities and insurance and life. They are the bucket that you can throw money into, and when you do, you get a tax receipt, and you can put whatever name you want on that bucket. It can be anonymous. It can be the so-and-so family foundation. Public foundations have the ability to take your funds, hold them, yes, create interest, but most importantly, then after you get your tax receipt, grant out to qualified donees, to charities and different partners to do the work you care about. And this is sexy new school planning, right? We got some of these public foundations out there, community foundations being the most accessible, but there's also foundations now connected to financial firms and banks, and they do that client planning. And on full disclosure, I worked for one at one time. So it's really cool stuff to say, I want to create a scholarship that's more about the part of Canada I'm from or people that I want to help than the institution, right? A scholarship without an institution, who ever heard of that? And now it can flow. Maybe it needs to be a university, but maybe it needs to be a college or even a public program. Now we have that flexibility, and public foundations are what give us the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And like, yeah, with public foundations, flexibility is, it's a really great balance between flexibility, control, and also not having to make concrete decisions today. There are decisions that you can sort of defer and even leave to family members down the road, which is a really neat thing to do. All right, awesome. So it looks like we are just about out of time, but I do want to thank you for spending the time with us today. I think, I learned a lot. I think the way you frame stuff is just incredible, and the work you're doing is fantastic. And the CAGP, the research, I think there is a webinar later this week
Yep.
talking about some of that research. And so anyone tuning into this, definitely make sure to check out CAGP and tune into that as well. I want to thank you, Paul. I want to thank Amanda and Sydney for helping put this together. And one last thing, in addition to following Epilogue on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, follow Paul too, because you get lots of amazing content, not just on the charitable side, but a lot of entertainment value as well. I enjoy following him, and you will too, so definitely follow Paul on all those social channels. You should click the link in our bio, because we have some articles up on Epilogue's blog about planned giving, and continuing throughout this month and beyond. It's something we love talking about, working with charitable partners to talk about planned giving.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Aaron. It's been great.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.